This is a class assignment. Note the video recording for her instructor. As Toastmasters, we encourage everyone to participate in our program with the unapologetic goal of getting them to join our organization. I went one step further. I decided to make this her icebreaker.
All right.
Bob, would you like to read the goal of the icebreaker?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Basically, we have two objectives. Number one, to begin speaking for an audience, and the second is to discover speaking skills you already have and skills that need some attention. 6 to 10 minutes.
Our speaker is a 26-year-old mother of one little boy and wife of a U.S. sailor. Her presentation this evening is about being rejected by the U.S. Navy and how she feels she is going to overcome it. The theme of her presentation is a way to show that no matter how big the devastation, we can come back better than ever. Welcome to the lectern for a 6 to 10 minute presentation. Timer, the light will be 6, 8, and 10. For her presentation of Plan B failed, now what? Welcome, Sarah Decker.
Thank you, Toastmaster, esteemed Toastmasters, and fellow guests. Thanks for also surprising that this is going to be my icebreaker. Well, we've all been there. Asked that silly question during an interview. What is your greatest fears? Well, we all either say something silly like, ooh, my greatest fear is dogs, or my greatest fear is being late to work. Or we kind of just ramble on in hopes that the asker forgot that they even asked the question and move on. Well, my greatest fear is the fear of rejection. I've been there, don't want to do it again. And I'm not talking about not getting that dream job or being dumped. I'm talking about having your life's purpose taken from you in a single note. I went to boot camp about 2 years ago where I was put through the separations process. I was viewed as a failure, a quitter, and used as a tool of what not to do. I don't ever want to do that again. And I will tell you how I've come back from that and how I've done everything in my power to show every person they're wrong. It all started with a simple bet between spouses. I told my husband that had I joined the Navy, not only would I get to his rank faster, but I would outrank him by his 6-year mark. Being the loving husband that he is, he takes me to the Navy recruiter's office to call my bluff. Which is where we found out that they were actually starting to put females onto subs. Now, this really isn't a new concept. The rumor had been flying around for years within the sub community that they were going to do this. But 2 years ago is when they actually started putting the first females with the nuclear background onto subs. I thought, wow, this is it. I finally have a purpose for my life. Not only do I have a chance to prove my husband wrong, but I actually get to go down in history as one of the first females onto subs. And at the time, there was still the distinct possibility of me becoming one of the first women to command her own ship. I buckled down. I studied, I learned the ins and outs of electricity, AC versus DC, way more than an engine than I'll ever need to know. I mean, an O-ring and how it affects a piston. So, day finally comes. I take the test, and all I can sit there and think was, you did your best, it's out of your hands, you can finally stop stressing about this. And I remember sitting there, waiting for my test results, just panicking, hoping I did good enough for a 91. And I'm not saying I needed to do good enough to get 91% of the questions right. No. I had to do better than 91% of the people who ever took that test. My recruiter who drove me up there thought it'd be real funny to tell me I got a 72, which is by no means a bad score, just nowhere where I needed to be. He sees me start crying. I mean, my knees give way, because that was a year's worth of work, and very hard work. I mean, I don't know anything about electricity still to this day, but I could tell you I probably spent about 100 hours studying this stuff. Well, he takes pity on me and shows me the actual test sheet. He says, look, Decker, no, you actually did a 92. And here's your line scores. Look at them, I promise you, you did just fine. And that's when it hit me. I had a 92. And the best part is when I looked at the line scores, which is the part of the test where the Navy breaks down its different sections to see what best jobs you're suited for, showed I had qualified for the nuclear programs off deck, which meant I had it. No secondary testing, which is virtually unheard of in the nuclear community. Fast forward about 4 months, and I'm sitting on the bus from Chicago's O'Hare to Great Lakes Recruit Training Command. I am so proud of myself that I'm actually here and doing this, but I'm also terrified and exhausted. Probably only had about 4 hours of sleep the night before, and thanks to my oh so loving husband, I knew I had another 36 hours before I got to go to sleep again. And preparing for this time at boot camp, I had known I wanted to go into what's known as a 900 division. They're the ones who perform during graduation and essentially lead the entire pomp and circumstance. They have a guaranteed training time of 8 weeks. 3 times harder though. But I wanted to stand there in front of everybody in my family and all the doubters say, see, look, I can do this. Not only did I do this in a much more condensed time, I did better than my husband. The redeeming part of this day was when my senior chief proclaimed that I was going to be the lead bass drummer, which meant I was going to stand front and center of the entire graduation ceremony and be the metronome. This was my validating point because a week beforehand, I had managed to throw up in the commanding officer's trash can in the middle of the performing hall. And I was also told by that same senior chief I was going to be the one female cut from the performers and put on cleaning crew. Now here I was, shining example. Unfortunately, that was also the pinnacle of my naval career. 2 days later, I went to what's known as a special phys. Being in special warfare, I had a lot more physicals to go through once in boot camp. I was unaware of a small note sitting in my medical file stating possible migraines. This was brought to my attention that day, and I sat and I fought for hours with this one man trying to convince him I don't have migraines. Little good it did me because I was still sent to the neurologist the next day. I was scared, but I thought I can come back from this. I'm still a nuke. It's not like they're sending me down to the psych ward. I can come back. It was there, in that sterile, small office, where not even the neurologist, but his intern proclaimed me with migraines. In a single breath, he told me I was unfit for the nuclear program. Even worse though, I was now unfit for the entire Navy. I don't remember much about the next few weeks, but what I do remember is the faces on all my RDCs just changed. They no longer greeted me with the same warm and affection that a drill instructor could kind of have for a recruit. I would greet and they would just ignore and move on. What really drove home the point though was one day I was standing in the chow line waiting for lunch. I was a part of the female separation division, and being a part of that, I don't get to see a lot of males, which trust me, when you're in a room about the size of this for 24 hours a day, seeing a group of sweaty men walk by is the highlight. So I noticed the 800s walk in, which by the way is the SEALs. I mean, good looking group of boys. I caught their chief's eye, so I stand up a little bit straighter and greet as I was trying to do, and then I turn back forward hoping to get into my chow line a little bit faster. That's when I heard it. look over there. Boys, look at those females. Them's the quitters. They couldn't figure out how to take a simple order. Keep it up and you'll end up just like them. And I know he continued to yell at those poor recruits for the rest of the meal. I had long stopped listening. Because it was then I realized I was branded with an A, like the Scarlet A. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I realized that chief didn't intentionally try to hurt me. He was just using me as a tool to motivate his own recruits. And I realized that when I got home that I was still branded by that same A. My employers or potential employers would look at my gap of the employment and say, now can you explain this 4-month gap? Or it says you're in the Navy, why are you applying for this job now? And their eyes would glaze over when I would say, hey, I was diagnosed with migraines. They didn't believe me, they just thought I was a quitter too. It got to the point where I still don't even list that on my resume. This is actually the first time I've told people who don't know my situation about what happened to me. But you know what? I've come back. I fought the VA and I've had that medical note taken out of my history. I don't have migraines. And if I hadn't have aged out of that nuclear program's age limit, I could even go back to my same division and say, I'm a nuke and I'm a 900. I realize that I probably will never serve the Navy in active service, but I'll be proud to serve it from the civilian side. And I know if I see any of my RDCs on the street again, I will go right up to them and tell them, I haven't failed. I am immutable.